Hello, and welcome to today's Coppice Dev stream. For those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Martin Pilkington. I run a small software company in the northwest of England called M-Cube Software. And when I'm not doing contract work, I'm working on my own indie app, Coppice, which is an app to help you collect your thoughts and ideas, link them together, and visually lay them out on an ever-expanding canvas. Now today we're going to be continuing with what we have been working on for the past few weeks, which is image linking. So hopefully today we're going to be able to get through quite a bit of stuff. If we switch over to our main view, you can see the to-do list that we've got. We probably won't get through all of this today, but we have our view edit mode that we want to get working, hook everything up to the data model so we can see if everything works in terms of like undo, redo and everything, and then see if we can add polygon hotspots, which would be kind of fun. And then we've got some other stuff making these things actually link to stuff. So that is what we're going to be working on today. For everyone who's watching, what are you working on today? Hope you're all doing well, and let me know what you're working on in chat. Hey Sinister, thank you very much for subscribing. It's very much appreciated. I am doing good. I've literally just had to run down because with 30 seconds to go, I realised I left my USB cable for my iPad downstairs, which if we need the iPad today for doing some drawing stuff, is going to be necessary. So thankfully I managed to run down, grab that, which is why I'm starting a little out of breath, because that was a bit of a sprint. So how are you doing today, Sinister? Oh, a lot to get through. Is this all work stuff that needs to get done, or is it personal projects that you're getting through, or life stuff? Yeah, unfortunately work stuff can be a bit tedious at times, but there are other times that it can be fun. Oop, I need to close that because I do not want any of my players seeing it, because that is from my Dungeons & Dragons campaign. What we want is this. What I want to add is this. There we go. But yeah, so today we're going to be working through all these various bits and pieces. It's my last day before I start contract work again tomorrow. I had last week off from contract work and decided to spend it working on Coppice, getting various other things done. So it's back to the usual schedule this week. So we're going to be streaming today, and we're going to be streaming on Saturday this week. But yeah, so I figured start an hour early because I'm feeling quite motivated. The sun is shining outside, though it's meant to potentially get a bit cloudy and rainy later. But I'm feeling motivated, got a lot to get done. Plus, I may need to pop out for 20-30 minutes or so midway through the stream. Unfortunately, I have a phone appointment at some point this afternoon. They give me a rough time, but it could be anywhere up to an hour before, an hour after, so I may have to just quickly drop out the stream when my phone starts ringing. But yeah, hopefully we can have quite a productive long stream today. I'm also thinking at some point, I'm probably not going to do it just now, but potentially do some evening streams at some point, because there are a few projects that I'd like to work on that have been brewing in my head. One of them is I would like to start making some form of advert of some kind for Coppice. When I get a new version out, create some sort of advert like demonstrating the new features and so on. And that should hopefully play into something that I've been wanting to try playing around with for a while, which is doing motion graphic work. And I'd like to start playing around with that kind of thing. It's also especially driven on by the fact that I'm getting a new computer that's meant to be really good for all sorts of video stuff, so it'd be fun to play around with that, and I figured I might as well stream that. I'm probably looking at doing it in Motion, learning Apple's Motion software for doing that, partly because After Effects is a fair bit more expensive. I mean, you're talking like $20 a month for After Effects, and I used to have it with Creative Cloud, but I ended up cutting down Creative Cloud because I was only using Photoshop and a little bit of Illustrator. So I figured I'll pay the monthly fee for Photoshop because it's worth it, but for everything else, and Motion's only $50, so I figure give that a go. Plus, it's meant to be better optimized for the Mac, so it would be fun to just learn how to use Motion and stream my journey on that and stream doing some stuff. The other thing I'd like to do is I went for a walk before this stream and I had a random idea, because there's a slight problem I have, which is that I'm using Apple's music app to play the music that you're hearing now. And part of the problem is it's kind of hard to automate because Apple's automation is a bit iffy with music. And also I want to add some additional stuff, like for example, I would like it where I could mark certain songs in my playlist as these have vocals on, and I want to be able to disable those for a certain period. So this point where the stream has started and it's fine playing in the 10 minutes leading up, but in this period I'd like it not to actually play anything with vocals for a little bit. So what I'm thinking of at some point is building a very quick and dirty app that just basically plays music. And what it will do is it will take some music and it will play it, and I can add some of this information on. I'm potentially also doing things like making it so that I can build a view that will actually display what is currently playing, so I could put that into the stream. But just something where I could show like a very simple demo app from scratch, playing around with some stuff, just hacking some stuff together and making it an open source project so that people can see it being built, see the code live, try it out themselves and so on. So it's something that I'm going to be playing around with. I haven't decided whether I might try doing it in Swift UI as sort of a thing for learning Swift UI. I may just do AppKit because I'm still more familiar with AppKit, and I'd rather learn Swift UI a bit later on when it's a bit more useful for the Mac, maybe when I start doing some more iOS stuff. So yeah, those are some ideas that I'm having for maybe some evening streams occasionally, so I may start playing around with those. But yeah, those are some ideas that I'd like to play around with. Yeah, so Creative Cloud is one of those things where if you're using several apps in it, it's actually pretty decent value. Like if you were using, like when I'm doing all this stuff where I'm going to start doing like video editing and motion stuff, if I was using Photoshop and Illustrator extensively, and then also using like After Effects and Premiere and all that stuff, it is fairly decent value for someone who is doing this for work. But if you're only using Photoshop like I was and a little bit of Illustrator, and you weren't really doing any of the other stuff, it's a bit expensive, especially as there's a Photoshop bundle where it gives you Photoshop and Lightroom, is it? and importantly, the full type kit section of all of the fonts and stuff, because I use those on my websites and so on. So all of that for just $10 a month, which is a lot more palatable when that is covering like 95% of your usage of Creative Cloud anyway. So it's one of those things of like, I'm not against subscriptions. It's just you need, because I mean, Coppice is $20 a year, but I mean that is $20 a year, not per month. So it's one of those things of Creative Cloud gets expensive unless you are using a lot of it, and I was not. For what little vector work I did, I've ended up going for Affinity Designer, and like I say, in terms of all the video stuff, because I'm on a Mac, I'm probably going to go for Motion and Final Cut for those sorts of things, partly because they're a one-off license, partly because they're a lot more optimized. Like Apple does a lot of work to fully optimize them for all their latest hardware. Yeah, there are a lot of good alternatives now. I mean, there used to be a lot of alternatives back in the day, but then Adobe bought Macromedia, and obviously everything merged. So rather than having Illustrator and Freehand, they dropped Freehand and kept Illustrator. Rather than Go Live and DreamWorks, they dropped their own Go Live product in favor of bringing over Macromedia's DreamWorks. So they took Dreamweaver, that's the one. So they took the best of each, but the problem is that sort of ruled out a lot of the high-end stuff. So there's a lot of good products out there now. Sketch is good for vector stuff. Affinity Designer is very good. Like all the Affinity products are pretty decent. On the Mac, you've got like Pixelmator, Acorn. On iPad, you've got like Procreate, and Procreate is an amazing app for any sort of stuff like that. I still use Photoshop because I mean I've grown up on Photoshop. I started with Photoshop 4 or 5. So this was back in the mid to late 90s. So I know Photoshop pretty well. It's what I have used for designing UIs and all stuff like that. So I just use that pretty much all the time for any graphics work. But I mean, for the amount I use it and how much like I enjoy using Photoshop, I think $10 a month is worth it, especially as it's a business expense. So for me, when I'm making money doing contracting and stuff, $10 a month is like not a lot of money. So it's one of those things of when you're doing things for work, you sort of balance out your costs a lot more. You think a lot more in terms of how many hours work is this rather than absolute money amounts, and you start realizing it's not a huge amount for what it is. I mean, it's like this computer that I'm planning on buying, which in absolute terms is a lot of money. I think the entire setup has now approached like £6,700, but that's for computer, monitor, backup and stuff like that. But considering I'm planning on keeping this for 5 years, and a lot of it will last longer than 5 years, like the monitor should last hopefully a fair bit longer. I think some of my monitors that I've got now are about 5-6 years old already, and they will probably last until they break. So that works out at, like, assuming everything was just 5 years and then it's all dead, that's £3 a day, which when you're using it to earn a living is pretty good. But if you are a student or someone doing something like as a hobby, that becomes a lot more expensive, because you aren't sort of saying, well, I'm paying this, but I'm earning this much more money from it. It's like, well, I'm paying this, and all I'm doing is paying this. So it's one of those things of, Adobe's certainly one of the more expensive ones. It's not the most expensive. I have seen some Pro Tools start getting ridiculously expensive. Toon Boom, I think, is something like 50. Like, I think that is like $50 a month, and that's just for one app. And I don't even think that's the most expensive one. There are some 3D graphics programs that get to like $50 to $100 a month or more. So some of these are like, when you look at some of these and you look at just how many pieces of software are in Creative Cloud, it's actually a really good deal. But like I say, it depends on how much of those are you using. The more Adobe apps that you use, the better value it becomes. But the fewer you use, the more it's just like, well, I might as well look for alternatives. And even if you use a lot of those sorts of apps and you don't have that money per month, which a lot of people don't, then you need to look for alternatives. And there are lots of cheaper alternatives, some that are still subscriptions, but it's that much per year. Because I mean, something like Sketch, I believe, is $100 per year, which is a great app, and that's a lot better. I think some of the alternatives to Coppice were closer to that. So when I was doing $20 a year, it seems like, that's a lot cheaper. But it's one of those things of the industry is sort of moving towards subscriptions for two reasons. One, it makes accounting a bit easier because software is continuously developed, but you have a thing where you do a release and you get paid, and then you do a release and then you get upgrades, and you do a release and you get upgrades, and you get new people coming in and you get upgrades. But the problem is there's a constant cycle there, and you constantly have to make sure that what you are adding is going to get people to upgrade. Whereas if you're doing subscriptions, the money is spread out more, so you can lower the initial cost. It's coming in a lot more consistently, so it's a lot easier for you to plan, and also don't have that pressure to make the next update some sort of really big thing that lets people, like, makes them want to upgrade. They can always upgrade to the latest thing. They don't have to worry about paying for it because they're already paying for it, and it's just, you can have a more natural cadence. The other thing is Apple with the App Store, and they still to this day have never really allowed upgrade pricing, so people have had to go through all sorts of different things, and there are some things you can do that still allow you to get a sort of upgrade model, but now it is like subscriptions are just easier to do. And it's also the case of, for me, eventually I want Coppice to be in the Mac App Store. I want it to be on the iPad. And what I want is that if you get Coppice Pro, you don't have to pay for it on the Mac and then pay for it on the iPad. That is one of the most annoying things. I want it that if you have a Coppice Pro subscription, that is Coppice Pro anywhere. You just log into your account on any device that you can get Coppice on, and if you're paying for Coppice Pro, you have Coppice Pro on all those devices. So that also makes this easier, because if you bring the Mac App Store version out and some people are already paying for it, but they figure, actually I want to download it through the App Store, well, they can do that, and they just log in and they get their existing thing. If someone buys in the App Store and then decides, actually I want to start downloading from the website instead, they could do that. And then when I bring out an iPad version, hopefully at some point in the next few years, then they can just download the iPad version, log in, and they've got full Coppice Pro already. So it's, in that case, a subscription just makes things a lot easier to manage, because you pay once and you get it everywhere. So it's, there's lots of pros and cons. It's just a case of making sure you don't do all the scammy behavior. Hi Dragon Dust, welcome to this chat. How are you doing today? We've just been discussing the pros and cons of subscription software and Creative Cloud, and how it is both very expensive but also a good deal depending on just how much of it you use. I am not too bad, thanks. I'm feeling quite chipper, quite in a productive mood. So we've just had a chat while I've been having a cup of tea, and I think now we're going to get started on coding. So what we have is all of our hotspots are working, but didn't mean to do that. And we have our creation working. We can move stuff around, and we have selection working and deletion working. But this is all only working here. So if I switch to the Coppice logo, you can see we've got the hotspot there. And I switch to the font inspector, we've got the hotspot there. So what we need to do is actually tweak some of this so that this is a view mode, and when we switch to here, it is a hotspot mode. Now, one thing I have noticed is that I have put the alignment of this control incorrectly, because this needs to be at the bottom of the view, not the bottom of the image. So let's fix that first. So where are we? Image of mode view controller. This needs to be to the bottom. Yeah, this to be outside of that. It needs to be horizontally centered, and then we want it to the bottom of the parent view. We're going to set to be 30 points. If we build a run, that's looking better. So then that goes there. That is looking pretty good. Right, so let's move on to so we have all this set up in our view mode view controller. So we're actually going to want to move some of this. I wonder, can we use one view controller for both modes? But simply change the no, because we've got to create the we could create the modes for the views. So let's go down here and let's change these modes to view. Interesting. Okay. So I wonder, We have a mode on the hotspot, and we've probably done this slightly wrong. Because for the mode, no, we do want the mode on here. It's just we want a mode on. Probably want the mode to be settable by the layout engine. So here we want to do guard case.view equals self.mode L. If case view equals self.mode return. Don't need this anymore. Right. So we have hotspot path. Because the problem is, ideally, if we can have this switch between being editable and not editable, then this does need stuff, but you could do editing handle reps for scale is editable. Is editable. I mean, you could actually, rather than passing in is editable, we could have a var is editable. And then the mode could just be creating our complete. Because then when we switch between view and edit mode for hotspots, we can have the same view controller effectively. We're just changing whether or not the hotspot layout engine is oh no, we've got other stuff that needs to display. I mean, we still need an editability thing here. Maybe what we need to do is make that optional. else if let hotspot bar creation equals stuff dot turn. Right. That's a fair point. Well, we can just do self.rect. Being editor create, then if you're within the rect, put that in there. That should work. Oh, sweet. Right. Point. Okay. Now, I am going to get rid of the view mode here. It's going to be case creating. The mode is going to have to be creating or complete. And if it's complete, then this is going to check the editability of the layout engine. So you're at all this stuff and then you realize you need to change it. Editable. Which means here you can actually remove the optional there because self dot is editable. We only do creation if it's editable. We still want to do this because we're eventually going to have these downed events when it's not editable be a click. So editable is true. So mod creating complete. Var is editable. And will return self dot layout engine dot is editable or false. Then we can do guard stuff that is editable else or return. Okay, hopefully that works. Right, so if we build and run, so that all works, that works, that works. So that all works. If we then do stuff.layout engine dot z equals false, then we're just in view mode. Sweet. So, what we probably want to do now is we'll get this hooked up. Yeah, we'll get this hooked up because we are going to want separate view controllers. We're just going to reuse the layout engine and some of the other stuff. The reason we want separate view controllers is this is going to have this switch control down the bottom when we're in the hotspot mode. whereas down here it may have, for example, the description displaying. In view mode, you're also going to be able to edit the image. So I mean, this is really more image mode rather than view mode, but this will let you actually edit this image here. Whereas in hotspot mode, you won't be able to. So yeah, let's have look here. Want we want pretty much same view, yeah. I hate how latest versions of Xcode, they open up nibs with sidebar collapsed down, and I never like using them in that mode because you don't get this editor here. You don't get all the names and everything. So, do not want our placeholder. And in here, we can get rid of that view. We don't need the placeholder view. I'm going to shift this over to here. Set this over to here, and actually, what we can do is equals set that up there. Right. So we need to get that in both places. That is staying bring subscribers over. This over. Now I could work to make it so it's one view controller that we reuse, but the thing is you have to pick and choose when exactly you want to just copy paste code versus actually make something so it is reusable. And sometimes just copy pasting is the faster, simpler option. Don't repeat yourself is not a dogma, it's a reminder. It's a guide rather than a rule. Yeah, your ultimate aim is always to make the code as usable for you in 12 months' time. That is always the aim. Everything else is secondary. So, with copy pasting stuff, makes the overall code easier to do, even if it makes it maybe just a little bit more clunky because you've got to edit in 2 places. Well, that's fine. Alright, so delegate is... Yes, I don't even think we need this view model. Because this stuff is going to be a separate thing where we're going to be observing the image page content so that we can actually feed that into the image editor hotspot. So I think what I will do that, and if I go back to image editor view controller, the self.view model. Hopefully import combine. It's always the case of import combine. Whenever I use combine somewhere, why are you complaining about that? Right, so you're in view mode. Okay, so we don't have the image showing because that's powered by bindings. Okay, so if I go into here, the data is going to be from files owner view model image. This is not going to be editable. That's editable, but those are not. That's broken. Can I? Oh yeah, it's got to be value, doesn't it? Value. Files owner. Model.image. Build and run. Hey! That is looking good. Now the thing is, if we move this here, when we switch back to view, it's not the same. And when we switch back to here, it's back because we are basically setting this up every time that we display it. What our next job is going to be, first we're going to get some last little bits done in view mode, which is a hover and a click state. And once we have that, let's see, pretty much everything's working in there. We're going to need a hover and a view state, and then we can start hooking things up to the data model. And that should mean things sync up between here, but you should also be able to undo redo. Are you referring to these boxes here, Sinister? Yeah, these are the hotspots. So the idea is that if let's just delete these. Let's say what I wanted to do, if I go over here, if I've got a text page and I want to link to something, I can say, okay, I've got this here. I'm going to select this text and link it to the Coppice logo. That is now linked so that when I click on that, I go to the Coppice logo. So what I want to do here is, at the moment you can link to an image page, but you can't link from an image page. So that is what this is going to be. So you're going to be able to go into hotspot mode and say, well, what I want to do is down here, I want this to be a hotspot. And then I want this to be a hotspot. And then maybe I want a circular one for this to be a hotspot. So I'll do that where I can draw it from the beginning. And then I want to position it a bit more. And then I decide actually I want that to be sized down a bit. So you can basically resize it all how you want. Then you'll be able to select these, and that same link inspector will appear here. So you'll be able to set them to be a link. In fact, what I may do when we get to that is that after you've created it, it selects it so that you can do that fairly easily. So then you'll be able to assign these to links, and then when you go to the view mode, you'll see that they all appear here. And you'll be able to go and click on that, and just like when you click on the link on the text one, this will be able to then take you to that page. Or if you're on the canvas, it will open the page on the canvas. So that is what these are going to be. So these are just like your edit mode for hotspots. And these are the actual things, the actual hotspots that you'll be able to interact with when you're in this mode. Now, of course, one thing that doesn't work particularly well, if ooh, oh dear. PO self.new value. No. Yeah, new value. Okay, VO self.image content. Not crop rec. Ah. Try that again. Okay. That wasn't cool. But yeah, you can see these do not respect the actual image. When you crop stuff, we need to have it so that these are also cropped, and also if you rotate, well, the hotspots are not respected and the crop rect vanishes. So one of the final things we're going to have to do is all these new features we've added, we need to make them all work together. Because it's like, it's great if all you want to do is rotate, or all you want to do is add hotspots, or all you do is want to crop, but if you want to use two of them together, you currently can't. Or you can, but you've got to make sure that you rotate and then crop and then draw hotspots. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to work on. But this shows how complex developing features is. Lots of features that seem simple at first, and then individually they become complex, and then making them work together makes them even more complex. But that's for a later time. We want to get them working individually, and then a lot of it is relatively simple, because for the rotation we just need to basically rotate everything 90 degrees, and for the crop we just need to have it not eliminate the crop rect, just rotate that 90 degrees as well. For the crop we just need to make sure that we shift the origin of all these, and yeah, that should all just work. So let's work on a hover state. So what we have in our hotspot layout engine is we have a moved event at point. So what we want to do is guard self.is editable equals false, else turn. We want the hotspot at the point if one exists. So let's make sure we're not editable and get the hotspot. Then what we're going to self dot highlighted hotspot equals hotspot. Now self dot highlighted hotspot equals nil. And for highlighted hotspot, what we're going to do, image editor hotspot. But is highlighted, we'll get that. Did set old value dot is highlighted false. New highlighted hotspot dot is highlighted true. Guard old is, no, we can't do that. Just have to leave that there. Actually, we could, if that highlighted hotspot, you could, if old value, and though that may not work because they're optionals. Maybe testing the optionals, but we will see. Saves us having to try and add equality to image editor hotspot. So on here is selected equals false, is highlighted equals false. Then in the layout engine, when this changes, we want to layout did change, and then in the view when we're drawing, highlighted. Let's just do NS color white, 0.01, 0.1, set fill, and then no, if hotspot dot is highlighted, I want to do it that way. Fill, hotspot after fill. Oh yeah, we actually need to pass the events down. So we need else new. Now I believe this won't work because I believe we need to create an NS tracking area, but we will see. Yes, we do. So what we will do is down the bottom, date tracking area, private bar, tracking area, and that's tracking area. Got key self. I'll use info. So now this should hopefully work. There we go. Probably highlight it a bit more. Oh, 0.5. That's a bit better. Okay. Right, so I'm going to be right back for a few minutes, and then when we're back we'll get clicking done, because I believe what we're going to have to do there is add a new state to our hotspot, where as well as is highlighted and is selected, we need a is clicked, so that when it's clicked that can be set and we can draw what we need here. So we may actually make that a mode or an enum, because you're going to have whether it's selected, and it can be selected and highlighted, but it can't be highlighted and clicked. So we'll probably make that into a mode so we can do a switch here. So yeah, we will do that when I get back. So see you in a few minutes. Okay, I am back. So let's get back into this. And let's get back into editing our hotspots. So I'm going to shift this around a bit. What we're going to actually, let's not add a state, let's just add a is clicked. Because it saves some state transitions, because what we'll do here if hotspot that is clicked else because it can still be highlighted after being clicked. So what this allows us to is if that is clicked through, after is clicked false. A private set are is clicked false. So make that a black fill and see how that looks. Okay. Is clicked must be declared in tail because it matches. Oh. Just a hotspot. We don't need a set on that. We need a get. Local layout change. There we go. There we want rectangle spot on right. On the dragged event, what we want to have happen is self.is clicked equals point self.rect.change point. because if the rectangle contains the point, then we're still inside. So we click, we're outside, we're inside, we're outside, we're inside. So over to highlight, click to select. I think that is view mode done. So let's save that. And check it off our list. So now we get to try and hook all this up to the data model. So what do we want to do for this? I think what we're going to do for this is have a one-time pass where I'm going to build and run and insert these hotspots into the data model for this image. And then what we should see is that we'll be able to make sure that we can load them, and then we can do editing and creation. So let's go into add what we want to do. Let's do this. Get those. Would start. Hotspot. Have a hotspot. Barracks. That image. Hotspot. I mean, these are going to have to be this because optional. After image. Okay. So if we build and run, that has been edited. So if I save that, we'll comment that out, build and run again. Now, what we want to do is print dots hotspots. Now, hopefully, there we go. They are saved to disk. So, all that work we did for saving works. What we need to do now is actually convert from these into these. So, that is where we had this view model thing here that we're going to delete. And what we're going to add is a image hotspot collection. This is going to be a class. Be initialized with an image content. Publish. It's going to return some image editor hotspots. So what we're going to need is our view model. Have let hotspot collection of dot collection hotspot collection with our image content. Right. So what do we need to do now? Do that. And for the moment, we'll do self dot node go to hotspots. Alright, I'm going to comment that out for now. The self.viewModel dot. Hotspots collection dot hotspots. So this should have no hotspots when we run. And it does. So now if we uncomment that, we do have hotspots. However, we are editing there. Okay. That's better. So we will also go in here. And set that up. Okay, so if we look at this, we're appearing here correctly. But if we go here, nothing is showing up. Perfect. So, what we need right. We've got hotspot view here. What we may want to do is actually make the delegate the view controller, have the view controller tell the view it needs to redraw. Yeah, that might be the way to do it, because what we want to do here is tell the view model. So this is sort of like an intermediary where this one needs to really go to the view, this really needs to go to like the model layer. Actually, self view. And where are we? Delegate stuff we can get rid of, because what we're going to in here, that delegate self, I'm going to do extension image editor hotspot mode view controller self.hotspot view. And then in view, yeah, we need the same there. So delegate self edit. Okay, I think what we will do, we don't need the dig commit, so we're going to create an extension to image editor layout engine delegate where we do func did commit edit engine and just do that, so we don't have to implement it in here. Right. So wait. So changing the origins for links on the scaled images, removing the links outside the scaled area, rescaling them to fit the scaled image. So it depends what you mean by scaled. If you mean scaling, if I build and run this, hopefully this will still work. Oh, of dot. Oh, we don't want to. We want to do that engine change. Same. Oh, so for cropped, it doesn't actually do anything at the moment. Because the cropped stuff does not work with the cropped stuff does not work with the hotspots. What eventually is going to happen is that when you crop down, we're going to have to shift the hotspots by the crop origin. When you rotate, we're going to have to rotate the crop hotspots. Now, when you rotate, you are physically changing something, so we can physically change the crop rect and the hotspots as well. When you crop, because it's non-destructive, we're not going to change the actual hotspot values because they're in sort of coordinates of the image space. So what we're going to have to do is shift those origins when we do that. Oh, I'm a bit lazy. Because we can't use self before we initialize, because Swift. So yeah, if we have our hotspots here and I crop down to here and then switch back, you'll see that it is drawing over here and they're all positioned incorrectly because all these hotspots are still being drawn and it's, I believe it hasn't updated the image size at this point, so it still believes it's the same image size. So these are being drawn based on the original image size and the original positions. What we will want to have happen is that it would basically redraw this, regenerate all these with a new image size, and it would calculate, okay, this one needs to be here, this one needs to be here, and this one is off the screen so it's not visible. And what we may end up doing is having it where if the link is partway off, then we just don't show it at all. And have it work that way. Now, that will mean that, yes, some things go missing, but the thing there, if something goes wrong, you can always go back. And then they're back in the correct place. Yeah, the way I'm thinking is that it would not remove them from the data. They would still be there. But when they're cropped, they would not be visible. So it would shift, like if we would say crop to this area here, then the origin would now be here. So rather than like the origin of this being like, what, 458 by 385, if we crop to here, it would now be 203 by 208. Because these are always in image coordinates. And then we convert them into view coordinates. So what that basically means is that these would not be entirely in that rect, so we would simply not draw them at all. So they would still be there in the data. If you uncropped it, they would display again, but they would not display there. And just in case you haven't seen it before, in case anyone else hasn't seen it before, the reason these are in image coordinates is that images can scale. So in here, the image either displays at its full size or it scales down. In a canvas, it can scale up or down. And when we scale down, obviously we want the image, the hotspots to stay in the same position. So we can't do like view coordinates, we do these in image coordinates. Because what we can do is you can scale it down. If I go, that's a fair point. That isn't working. But what I could do is scale down, draw a hotspot, and then scale up. And because we're storing these in image coordinates, it means that they can scale up and down infinitely and they will always be in the correct relative position. So the only time that we'd actually remove the hotspots is the same time that we would remove the crop rect, which is if you dragged, because you can replace an image with another image. If we replace this entire image with a new image, if the dimensions were different, then, I mean, we'd probably get rid of the crop rect regardless, but if the dimensions were different, we would probably get rid of the hotspots as well. We may get rid of the hotspots regardless, because if you throw a new image in, it may be different, but I mean, it could be the same image and you want to just have an updated version of it. So we may do it where we try to keep as much as possible when the image size is the same, but when it's different, then it doesn't make much sense, so we'll probably just remove all that information. But again, the idea is that you should be able to undo that. So now all this is hooked up, we now have this did commit edit. And what we want to do here, when this is done, we want to print out hotspots. Self.layoutengine.hotspots.map image hotspot. And then we're going to see what happens here. If I go here and I drag that, okay, so we're not firing that off. So what we want to do on an up event is if self.is is editable, self.delegate dot did commit edit in self up event at point modifiers event count. I might be tempted to make this a Boolean return so that we can return whether or not we actually changed anything. Because what we can do is check, is the initial rect different to our current rect? And if it is, we can return false because we haven't changed anything. They've just clicked on something. Maybe they've selected it. Maybe they have moved it and then moved it back and so on. So yeah, I think we'll do that so that we're not doing unnecessary. So in this case, if the current drag state is there, we return false. And then at this point, if drag state.initial rect let rect has changed equals self drag state.initial rect equals self.rect. Not equals self.rect. Then we set the rect that to null, and then we return rect has changed. And we can do guard current rect hotspot of dot editable, and no, we don't want that. We want let has changed that editable and has changed, then the commit edit. Then in here it should now fire that off. Oh, yes. That needs to be update the protocol as well. Go here. If I click, then nothing is being printed, but if I resize and something is being printed, if I shift that way, but then that way, okay, something on. Okay, that seems to be working. So what we can now do, self.layout engine at image hotspot, do self.view model dot image content dot hotspots equal that. Then what we want to do hotspots self dot view model dot hotspot collection $image editor hotspots. Now we could do an assign, but we're going to do a sync. Yeah, and you can see why we're going to do a sync in a bit. Going to sync, and this is going to do self.layout engine .hotspots. Yeah, I suppose we could do an assign as long as we do a filter. No, let's do a sync. Let's not go crazy with combine. Hotspots. This needs to be a weak self. Then we're going to do self.subscribers hotspots equal that, and eventually get rid of that because publisher will fire this off. But oh, compact map. Right. So if I move this to here, then what should happen? That should be saved to the data model. It should force an update to happen. So when I click on here, it has moved. Now, let's see if this also works. If I hit Command Z, it does not. However, okay. I know why. Because our hotspot collection here does not observe the image content here. So if we do subscribers, stick this. No, let's stick this here and hotspots. Image hotspots. Self.image editor hotspots. No. Self.subscribers dot map. No. Image hotspots equals, because it hasn't added bind, but bind. Subscribers image editor hotspots equals self dot image content dot publisher for hotspots dot sync hotspots in. What we're going to do is reload image editor hotspots, hotspots, self.reload image hotspots, use hotspots. I believe because this is using KVO, we need to call this separately here. So this is going to be self.image content hotspots. So this is why undo redo probably wasn't working. Hotspot. Try that again. Move that to there. If I undo. Oh. So it's updating there. It's just not doing an update live. Okay, so stick that in. That should be firing. Do that. After that layout change itself. That is probably why. Bring this across. Move this over here. There we go. We have undo redo working, and it works in view mode as well. Let's do that. Let's decide we're going to draw another one there. Draw a circle there. And delete that one. If we go to view mode, that should appear. That should vanish. That should vanish. And that should shift back over there. If we redo. When you get a system, when undo redo is actually working like deep in the data model layer and everything is observing the data model, it is such a good feeling. It is the best feeling in the world just to have undo redo just work when everything is observing. And that is all from the data model stuff that I've built. All this infrastructure, where are we? Coppice core. All this model infrastructure here that I've built. And it's not a huge amount. I mean, that's 60, let's say 75, 255, let's say 460, 300, 370, 460 lines of code. And this does a huge amount of stuff, including undo, redo. So this is all looking pretty good. It's all hooked up to the data structure. In fact, if I save this and switch away, come back, they all appear there. I can quit the app, I can relaunch the app, they appear there. Let's go here. Add one there. Add one there. Go to view mode, we'll save, we'll quit, we'll relaunch. That amazing. I'm really pleased with that. So that has finished us hooking up to the data model. Oh. So what do we want to do next? So I should have this phone call at some point soon. So what I think we can do, we could style this down here. In fact, chat, what would you like to see me work on next? Would you like to see me work on styling this control down here? Or would you like to see me start work on polygon hotspots, the most advanced form of hotspots? Okay, let's work on styling then. Because we want this to be fairly custom. Now let's see how far we can get just with the standard controls. Because we may need to write a custom control for this to get what we want. So if we go into our here, let's have a look at what options we have. We have capsule. We've rounded that. That's probably closest to what we want, but we probably don't want the border. That should rounded. Nope. That should square. Nope. Small square. Nope. separated, definitely not. Okay. Well, what we're actually wanting is something that looks maybe a little like this. Where we have our buttons here. You just have an image and it's just a translucent black background. And then it's going to be a hover state when you hover over one of them, and then there's going to be a state here, which is going to be sort of similar to in fact, if I open text edit, what happens? Work if like no, it doesn't goes there. Okay, if I go to text edit and create a new document, hello world, I'm going to show you what I want this to look like. File, export as PDF. Right, so if I open this, there. This is what I'm going for down here. Now this is more of a toolbar, but you have like opening preview, you have download, these PDF controls. So this is what I want to really go for. So what I might do is take a screenshot of that. Bring that in. Right. That. Aha! 75% black. Perfect. Want these. Probably want them to be a bit more rounded. So what I'm going to do, if I take the stroke and I put it on the center. I mean, we may have a look if there are SF symbols for these. But that's already looking a bit more SF symbol like. But what we also want to do is about 90%. No, probably more 85. That's 5%. But what we will probably do is the selected one will be all white. Now this rectangle probably want yeah, probably about that. That's 10. Let's try 8. That looks alright. Yeah, I like the look of that. Might want to make it bigger though. Right, so how tall is... Okay, so that's 40 point... Oh, was that 40 pixels? 40 point... How they do? Okay, so... Doing now because I believe... Yeah, that is already a retina. Okay, so I think that looks fairly good. Let's have a look at SF symbol. And see what we may have. Yeah. Okay. We've got a square, we've got an oval, we've got a pentagon. Let's try square, oval, and pentagon. So what I'm going to do is copy, paste, paste, paste. No, let's do it. Take that. Do a fresh thing. That to, let's see. Point. 6 point. Check our pentagon. 36 point. Take all of the probably 1 point. Probably semi-bold. Okay, bold. Nope, not want to be. You do have. Oh, I want to. Okay. Output. And all white. Make those. Yeah, so all the stills. So let's 4. I think that looks alright. Square, circle, pentagon. May need to tweak the sizes a bit. Make them all the same height. So that looks a lot better now they're the same height. So yeah, we won't be able to use the SF symbols as is, but I mean, the thing with SF symbols is that half the time you can't use them as is because they're not icons, they're fonts. And being fonts, they do not make very good icons. So let's work on this, because getting the images to appear shouldn't be too difficult. It's the background where we're probably going to need a custom NS segmented control cell. So this is where I go looking to see NS segmented control. NS segmented cell. NS segmented control. Ooh, water. Hit menu. Where do I actually use it? This is something I've... Because I know this is a segmented. Oh. That's just completely customized. Okay, let's have a look at NS segmented control, because Been a long time since I've done a proper full. Because that is just about adding the image, the rest of it is actually handled by AppKit. Interesting. What did bezel color? Was there segment? Alignment and all stuff like that, which standard stuff. I don't think control has a background. Font. Expansion name. Oh. So, what we are going to have to do is nested cell. Okay, so what we want to do is override. So what we are probably going to do is open up our view playground. Hopefully this should run. Yes. There we go. So, that entity control segment. Okay, so we have our segmented control in there. Right, I need to go because I have this phone call with the doctor, so I will be right back. Hello? Okay, I am back. Sorry for having to run away like that. That was just a follow-up from the doctors. I had some tests done back in the tail end of 2020, and I never had the final follow-up. So I ended up having that now, over a year later, because the pandemic did a lot of stuff and it delayed a lot of stuff. So that ended up being a fairly short phone call of, yeah, I got the test back ages ago and they're all fine. It's like, yep, they're all fine, we can discharge you now. Okay, fair enough. But what that means is now that's out the way, we can get back to coding. So let's start doing some styling. We've got our segmented control in here, and what we're going to do is create a class. What should we call this? Like, oh, thanks for the follow, Nicholas Codes. Welcome to the stream. So, class translucent segmented oh no, segmented cell. NS segmented cell. So what we're going to do is our segmented control dot cell is going to equal a translucent segmented cell. Hopefully that should just work. No, that's broken. So what we're going to do is let's create a class as and control and size self dot class self. That hopefully compile. No, it does not. What compiler error? Not permitted by Swift. Huh. Okay, how on earth do you do that in Swift then? This is where we all learn something. Size. Okay. Load. Just the general Objective-C class method, or is it just initialize? Oh. Okay. Oh. See if we can just return south. That way? Okay. So that works. Change this to a lucent. It shows how long it has been since I did this sort of customization on segmented control, because I was using Objective-C the last time this happened, so all of that stuff used to work. Okay. So for our segmented cell, draw segments. So if we do that, ha! Action. So it's not draw segment that we want. Is probably NS cell, draw. Draw with frame. Material with, oh. Not interior with. Okay, so it's not that. In fact, let's roll dot. Go. Go with frame. Okay. But what that should hopefully let us do, God, let self.segment count. Well, 0 segment for each. You let width self.cell width segment. Going to do let frame oh, that's going to be vote. If we set our frame to cell frame, what we're going to do, frame.origin.x equals current x, frame.size.width equals width, and then we're to do current x plus equal width. Then what we can do is self.draw segment $0 in frame with control view. Okay. So the width is 0. Okay, net width equals cell frame dot width divided by self dot segment count. That's right. So there we go. So what we can do here, let's do ns ns color dot white 0.75 dot set fill as Bezier path rounded rect with cell frame 8 dot fill. Hey, that is progress. Can I? Right, well, let's have a look here. First thing we probably want to do is it content size. What we're going to do is for size equals super dot intrin. Yeah, let's just get the super for now. I'm going to do size dot height equals 20 return size. We want segment control.trans false. At 20. Yeah. I wonder if we want that to be 40 then. I wonder if it was. There we go. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is set clip and let's busy path rect frame dot oh no. And here what we're going to do is if self dot selected segment $0, then ns, I don't know why we need to do ns busy path, we can just self frame dot fill. And here we can do ns color dot white 1.2 let fill frame dot fill. Oh, that's why it didn't appear. But it just so happens that they are pretty much the exact same. You can just about see the difference. I was like, why has it suddenly made it translucent? Because they're pretty much the same colour. Yeah, I think we probably want about a 3 or a 2.5. Be a 2.5. Right, so the question is, how do we get it drawing them in the centre? Because the text alignment isn't working. And the thing is, it's probably getting the size. So do we have an S cell? It must be getting the image or the text, working out the bounds that it needs to do, and then telling it to draw. But why? Because surely you just say, here's a frame, draw correctly in this frame. Let us get rid of that. That's drawing centered. So what I want is print frame and super segment. Frame with control. Haven't. Hiya Pirate, thank you for the follow. Hope you enjoy the stream. We are just trying to work out what on earth is going on here. Maybe that changed the widths of this. Build anytime, playground. Anytime you want. Yes, it does. $11.49.88. B2 app. Okay. So we are going to have to bring it over. Hey Parrot, thanks for chatting. How are you today? See you later, Sinister. Thanks for joining me today, and yeah, hopefully this will all work out. Just need to do some little bit of calculation with this. I think at this point we're going to have to bring this over to the app because we're going to need to create these images and bring them in. So what we can do is if we copy this, go over to the app and stick it in here. What do I call it? Augmented row. And if we paste these in, we can go up to our hotspot here, and we'll make this a oh, that's a fair point. I wonder the ball. That actually, oh yeah, or app kit. Yeah, for customizing a segmented control, like I've done it in the past. Generally, you are creating a lot of it from scratch. Like it can give you a lot of like the core bits that you need, but when you start needing to do some custom drawing, then it starts really really messing stuff up. And I'm not even trying to do anything too complex with this. It would be a lot nicer if Apple just finally bit the bullet and had dropped NSL. Like they've been moving in that direction, and I think they need to some degree if they want to support SwiftUI customization of a lot of these controls. But yeah, it's a bit of a pain. But I mean, it's not that often that you need to actually go through and start customizing stuff. But it seems IB Designable is not going to work for this. Let's build and run. Take a look. Okay. Oh, because this is in a nib. Therefore, we need to change the cell as well. No. Resolution segmented cell. I wonder if IB Designable will work now. Where are we? Editor. Close this. Open it again. No. Seems when you subclass stuff, it does not let you do IB Designable, which is a shame because when it does work, IB Designable is fantastic. So there we go. Yeah, it's a shame because I have IB Designable working in other parts. I mean, IB Designable. Like the link control is a great one because if I go here, it's not as fast as SwiftUI, but I mean I still haven't managed to get, like there's a hack that you can do with SwiftUI to get it showing like your AppKit stuff. I've tried that and never managed to get that to work. This is a bit slower at first. Especially as my machine feels slower and slower by the day because it's an Intel machine. The more Swift development I do, the more it feels like it's slower and slower and slower, and there we go. So like the link control shows up just fine in here. So like IB Designable when you got your custom controls is fantastic. It's just, it would be nice if it worked for subclasses. I sort of understand why it doesn't, but I mean, the IB Designable and Inspectable are certainly easier than back in the old interface builder days where you had to build an entire plugin to get this sort of functionality. So it's an improvement. So let's have a look-see. Image editor. Hotspot controller. Right, so what I am going to do is switch over to Photoshop. You know what? I'm going to recreate these because then we can get our pixel perfect precision. So how big is this roughly? 22. So if we do 22 by 22, that'll scale nicely down to 11 by 11. So if we do a new, actually no, we want it to be 22 by 22. We want it to scale to 44 by 44. So we do 22 by 22 to begin with. 72 pixels per inch. And we're gonna black. Actually, I don't want to do black. Leave it as white. Rectangle tool. Let's do 22 by 22 by 22, and then we are going to side be black. I'm gonna fill down to I haven't actually done anything with SwiftUI yet. No, I mean I've played around with SwiftUI. I haven't really done any sort of deep dives, and I certainly haven't shipped anything with SwiftUI yet. I think in my own code, I don't have any SwiftUI. In some contract stuff that is a little bit of SwiftUI, but it's all in like debugging views and stuff, so it's nothing that is being shipped. It's still... It's certainly not there yet for the OS versions I need to support, because I currently support all the way back up to all the way back to Catalina. So on the Mac, it's still a bit too janky in places. It could do with like a bunch of improvements. It's certainly better with each OS version, but like macOS 12 is getting there, but it's still not quite there. I think with like iOS 15, especially for the iPad, it's really getting there, but it's just still a bit too... Like, the bigger the device you get to, the less well suited it is, and the more complex the app, or rather the more editability that you add in, the less suited it seems to be at the moment. So if you're building a watch app, or you're building an iPhone app, which is mostly just displaying data from online, it seems to be really good. And it's especially good at prototyping. It's just when you start building the much more complex stuff, that is when all the flaws in it seem to appear. You tried simple experiment for Apple TV. Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums up SwiftUI. Great when it works, but ran into so many rough edges and weird quirks. That pretty much sums it up. I mean, I thought, oh, it may be better. Like, when I first tried it for Catalina, I was like, this is in no way usable. Then I saw some people like, okay, I'm writing new apps for Big Sur, I'm going to use SwiftUI. And the amount of people I saw that jumped in on SwiftUI to build a new Mac app for Big Sur, who ended up rewriting their app at the last minute to use either Catalyst or AppKit because SwiftUI was just that bad, that put me off for a while. macOS 12, like I say, seems to be better. It's one of those things where when it works great, it's brilliant. When it doesn't work great, you don't really have the capability to work around it. It seems to be optimized for certain things and to be great for prototyping and demo stuff, But when you really get into the nitty gritty and wanting absolute pixel perfect precision and full control over things, it falls down. And it's a question of how much of that is SwiftUI and how much of that is simply that is how declarative UI works. Declarative UI does not give you the ability to be precise. It's the exact same issue that you have with HTML and CSS. If you use them to your advantage to be a declarative system and to display documents and stuff, it's fantastic. But when you start trying to use that to build UIs, you start to run up into the limitations, and you need all sorts of hacks to get it to work. And to me, there is some degree of declarative UI is just inherently like that. And I do wonder whether SwiftUI can ever be a full replacement because of the flaws of declarative UI. So that therefore becomes, okay, so what is the sweet spot? Because declarative UI can be great for certain types of things. So it could be a case of a lot of stuff does end up becoming really great to do in SwiftUI. But it could be a case of those hoping for SwiftUI to replace UIKit and to replace AppKit. If I am right, and it is just inherent that declarative UI doesn't let you do that sort of stuff as well, then it could be a case of it doesn't become a replacement, it becomes another layer on top. And that would not be a bad thing, because then you have the ability to go down a level to AppKit and UIKit when you need to, but you have SwiftUI when it's great. I mean, it's the whole thing of when do you use a web view in your app versus doing something native? And it all depends on what you are doing. And in some cases, using a web view is better. If you're displaying content from online, then obviously it's better. If you are displaying stuff where you're displaying like relatively static content and doing a lot of styling and stuff like that, a web view can potentially be better. But in other places, native is like objectively better. So I think what it will become is SwiftUI will become another tool in the library. The key thing to what it becomes is what happens in terms of Apple's teams. Because from what I understand, Apple's teams, in terms of their product teams, are not the keenest on SwiftUI. Like, some teams have gone in for it, but a lot of other teams are sort of like, we're just sticking with UIKit and AppKit, and they're using Catalyst. That's why so many of the apps that have been brought to the Mac have been Catalyst apps. And you get some really bad ones like the Podcasts app or the Home app especially, though that's bad on all platforms. But then you get some pretty decent ones like the Messages app and so on. Or you get some of the third-party ones. Things like Lookup or Broadcasts or PDF Viewer, which are fantastic Catalyst apps. But with SwiftUI, the only one they really have is Shortcuts. And I mean, a few streams ago, I talked about Shortcuts, and literally in just one action, I found so many bugs. And those bugs, some of them, a lot of them are UI bugs. Some of them are just general bugs. But that is the only sort of full SwiftUI app they've done. And it's a bit of a disaster. And it's a question of how much of that is down to SwiftUI, how much of it isn't. And it's just... it's a balancing thing. I mean, the key thing is that replacing AppKit and UIKit is not something that's going to take a few years. This is like a decade or more project. So if they want SwiftUI to be a replacement, it is going to take that long. but it's a question of, is it ever going to replace them? My gut feeling at this point is no. UIKit and AppKit are always going to be there because this basic concept simply does not work well enough for all parts of UI. So it's ultimately going to be a thing of use SwiftUI where SwiftUI is great, use AppKit and UIKit where they're great, and ultimately I think that is the best world for everyone, because it's like, use the best tool for the job. Get the benefits of both and the disadvantages of neither. So that is where I hope we go. But we will see. I mean, it's a similar thing with programming languages. Use functional patterns and code and stuff where they're ideal. Use object-oriented where it's ideal. And there are a few cases where just use imperative where that's ideal. They all have their pros and cons, so take advantage of that. I'm very much a pragmatist programmer. I am not someone who says you must do this all the time, this exact way. I'm just, no, if this tool is the correct thing for this exact moment, then great. That's the tool we're using for this exact moment. Now, what I am going to do, let's do image size 200. Canvas size. Change this to 100 by 100. Just to take a look. That looks fairly good. Right, so now we want a circle. Going to fill 0, and we're going to copy layer style, paste layer style. But yeah, I agree with you, Parrot. It can be hard to grasp what it's doing internally. I know some people prefer the way it seems to work. I mean, people have had this issue with auto layout as well. But the thing with auto layout is, like, I mean, I've literally given conference talks on how auto layout works internally, because it's all just linear programming. It is just a bunch, like, each constraint is a y equals mx plus c equation, and it's just doing linear programming to solve all these equations and optimize for it. It's stuff that you learn in how to do in school, just a lot more complex. And I've done conference talks about the algorithms of how they do that efficiently. And I'm not sure if it's still linked, but when they first put out a paper on how auto layout works when it was first introduced, they linked to the scientific papers that actually went through all this and how they do all this and how they do priorities and stuff. So there are actual scientific papers out there that explain how it works, but there isn't really that for SwiftUI. Now, part of that is that back then Apple's documentation was a lot better, and now it's getting better. They're finally fixing it, but yeah, it's a bit of a black box. But I mean, that's what I mean about declarative programming, is that it is almost intentionally a black box to some degree, because you're not meant to have control over how it works. And like I said, this is why HTML, CSS can be great, but can be a pain, because you do not have that same level of fine-grained control that you do with a native framework like UIKit or AppKit. Alright. So, we'll go here. That looks okay. That's okay. That looks okay. Now, I think what we may want... Okay, so that is 4 pixels there. Okay, so I think this is looking good. So what we will do is we'll shrink this back down to 44 by 44. Proceed. Get rid of that, and then let's save some images. PNG, export. Order on the desktop and call this is create save as polygon 2x. At 2x. An ellipse. Well, put 2. Image size this down. Sent. Oval. And polygon. Save this on the computer. Apps, Coppice. Artwork. Spot icon. Alright. Icon. Folder. Hotspots. Drag these in and render as template image. Then when we go to here, change to rectangle. Right, let's rename these. Hotspot oval, hotspot polygon, and hotspot grid. Yeah. Hotspot grid. Spot oval. Hot. Spot. Polygon. Right, so if we build and run. Okay, that is looking pretty good. So all we need to do now is center the images. And we could also do with drawing them at a... do we need to draw them at 90%? It's a completely minor thing to do, and I don't think we need to do it. I am perfectly happy to leave these there because that is more than enough distinction. However, probably going to change that to be a 30% fill, make it a bit brighter. Okay. So, go here. Okay, see you later, thanks for coming, and hopefully you'll come join again. I'm hoping that I'll get this finished up soon. Right. Let's get rid of that. I'm going to do a private phone. Frame or segment. Frame for segment in cell frame. So the segment width is frame divided by CG float after segment count. So we can have a full segment. Right. You got your cell frame here. Here's the actual side. One. Okay, so there's meant to be a divider by that. So what we can do. Minus floating segment count. What we're going to do is we're going to take away a floating segment count minus 1, and then we're going to divide by the floating segment count. So what that should do from the cell frame, I'm going to do frame dot equal segment times if this up. Right, so hopefully this works. Should give us frames that, well actually, let's throw this back in. So we're printing out the frames so we can see what exactly we're doing. Go in. So those are all correct now. So all we need to do is actually center these. So what we are going to do is see, core graphic. Have a size centered in yeah, centered in rect. So we have our frame there. Let image equal self dot image. So if we get the image for the segment, what we want to do is frame equals image dot size centered in frame. Dot y equals 0. Dot dot height. Set that there, and this should work. Yep, so what we want to do now is, for the intrinsic content size, what we're going to do is size, not making this too reusable. If we need to reuse it for other things in the future, we can do, but we're just going to do let's do 44 times self dot segment count, and height is 40, and see what that looks like. Okay, let's do 60. Okay, doesn't work. Right, so what I'm probably going to do is manually. Where are we? Yeah. Width 50. Like that. Okay, undo 2. That should do 2 then. What happens if in turn, if we just returns 50 there? Chance this may work, and the chance it may not. Ha! No. So why would that work? I wonder. Oh. Let's go back. Here. Take this off. Set that to 50. Set that to 50. Set that to 50. We build and run. It was offsetting these. So I wonder if the reason it is offsetting them is the code that we added to offset them in the first place when it wasn't doing that itself. So we want our translucent segmented control. But what I'm meaning is, if we get rid of that, is that going to work correctly now? Very well may do. And it does. Sweet. Oh yeah, that needs to be the correct translucency. Where have I gone and put? Yeah. I think that needs to possibly go to 85. Yeah, I think that was good enough. I think what I am going to do for full frame equal frame, I'm going to do fill frame dot size dot width minus equal 2. And let's see what this looks like. That looks a bit better. So what I'm going to do is then I'm going to do the 0 is greater than, in fact, let's just, at this point, let's segment in. Let's place all these $0s. So it's greater than 0, we're going to do fill frame, now if segment equals segment count minus 1. So if it's the last segment, else. No, else if, yeah, we do want segment greater than 0. Hi Mike, thanks for following. Welcome to the stream, and hope you enjoy the stream. Let me know how you're doing in chat. What we're going to do is take another 2 off because we're going to shift the origin here, but on the very last one we don't want to take the 2 off. Just want to shift the origin. So what that should do is decrease the width by 2 here, here, but on here it doesn't, and that sort of makes them appear a bit more centered. They're not actually centered, but visually they look a bit more centered. So I think that fairly reasonable. And what I am going to do is commit to this. Style hotspot. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I think what I'm going to do, especially as we started an hour early, this has been a long stream and I am feeling rather hungry, and we are just able to check off another thing on the list there. I think I'm going to call it there for now. So what I may do, as I mentioned earlier, is may start looking at doing some evening streams where I work on stuff that isn't coding, or rather that isn't coding on Coppice. There'll probably be short streams. I may try to do it like Wednesday, Thursday evening. Just try a different time and working on other stuff. The two things I'm looking at is working on a simple open source AppKit app to handle my music, so that it's something that I can play around with. Some things that I'm not really touching on in Coppice, so throwing some music in there, some music playback, shortcuts, so that I can do some automation, just something to play around with, so that I can have something where it is actually doing some drawing, and I may use a little bit of Swift UI in that and experiment with that. It's so I can have like a music player that I can capture some stuff from to display on the stream, so you can see what music is playing and then get a bit more control. So it's just a little sample app that build from scratch on the stream to play around with. And I'm also wanting to potentially start learning how to do some motion graphics. So I may start looking at learning motion. So I can do some motion graphics for use in the app, for use, especially trying to build some degree of adverts, like video for Coppice for the new version. So it would be nice to play around with that and just experiment learning Apple's motion framework and see what sort of stuff I can come up with. I have never really done motion graphic stuff before. I've done a little bit. The most I've done recently has been building the animations that I've done for the website, but I used Hype for that because that allows me to do them as HTML. But I think for something that is a bit more advanced, I'd like to play around with Apple's motion and see what I can do. So I haven't made a commitment yet when exactly I do that. So if you do want to see that, make sure you give me a follow. You'll be notified when I go live. I do like to do occasional impromptu streams when I'm feeling up to it. So hopefully you will enjoy me. You'll join me for that and see a bit more than just me hacking away on code, but also some of the other aspects of building up this stream, of building up Coppice and some of the other stuff around shipping software, such as marketing and trying out new stuff there. So hopefully you'll join me for that. But until then, I hope you all have a wonderful evening, a wonderful day, whatever time it is, wherever you are, a wonderful rest of the week, and I will see you hopefully some point this week. If not, the next Coppice Dev stream is on Saturday at 2 PM UK time. But until then, happy coding.